Welcome to the Overwhelm is Optional podcast, where each week we find ways to gently rebel against the nonsense that overwhelm and exhaustion are just the price you pay to have the life you want. Hello, Heidi here. Welcome to this week's episode. I really want to talk about New Year overwhelm. I just think it's so important to talk about this. So I don't know about you, but the new year has both the delights of, oh, it's new, I'm going to do things differently this year, and the pressure of, it's new, I should be doing things better this year. This is going to be so much better. So there's two things going on there, aren't there? The opportunity and then the pressure that comes from opportunity. And into the mix of that is the fact that our apparent new year, and I really want to mess around with dates and times to help you see things in a way that's better for you. So I guess what I'm saying is, let's gently rebel against the idea that the 1st of January is the best time for the new year energy, because I don't think it works. I mean, I'd be really interested to know whether, if any of you, I know there are people listening every week in the Southern Hemisphere, or some of you actually are nearer the equator. So your experience of the 1st of January is very different than mine. And I'd absolutely love to know if the 1st of January as a new year feels right for you, and whether you think, well, I guess you wouldn't know unless you'd lived in the Northern Hemisphere. Can anybody weigh in on this for me? The 1st of January here in England is cold, dark and pretty miserable. And this year in particular, it's been very, very rainy, which means that it's even darker. So we've been through past the solstice, and it is getting lighter. And I have noticed on some days it is noticeably a little bit lighter. It feels to me I'm noticing it more in the morning than the evening. And it's only minutes, but I don't know whether it's just me. Imagine, it doesn't really matter, does it? Here we go again. The brain doesn't know the difference between reality and imagination. So if I decide that the pressure is off, as in it's not getting darker and darker after the solstice, it's getting lighter and lighter, even if it is only by a minute a day, even if it actually stalls for a bit in the morning, it doesn't matter. If my perception is, oh, brilliant, it's getting lighter, I feel better, that works for me. I'm going with it. What about you? What works for you? Does the new year being the 1st of January work for you? So that's what this episode's about. Let's address New Year overwhelm, the pressures, and let's just find a way through that works for you, for me. Let's gently rebel against the pressure of the new year. Let's make it joyful, playful, curious, fun, easy, all the good stuff that we want, rather than overwhelming and pressured. So I've got a small list. Let's see where this goes, of things that I think contribute to New Year overwhelm. But I want to talk about the symptom of New Year overwhelm. So New Year overwhelm is, if last week was your first week back to work, did it feel like you'd walked into a wall of concrete? Because I know that's how, for me, when I used to go out to work in a high-pressure teaching career, I often felt, even when I was excited about the year, that dragging myself out of that Christmas cosy relaxedness into the alarm going off and it's still dark for a long time yet, into a bright classroom. And I really struggled with the lights in my classroom. They replaced the lights, and oh my goodness, I couldn't have them on. I would get migraines, and I don't get migraines, but I get that, like, very occasionally when I'm very tired, I get that weird hazy light thing. And the lights they put in my classroom, without discussing it with me, because that's not how things work, right? And I get why, that's not a bitter thing. But they replaced these lights, and I couldn't have them on. And what really used to upset me actually is that other people would come in and switch the light on as if it wasn't my environment, as if I wasn't in control of my environment. I mean, it's okay. They were probably just assuming, oh, she's not realised it's quite dark in here. But I couldn't work with the light on. I would get tired very quickly, and I knew I was in danger of ending up with this hazy light thing. So I really struggled with the lights, and it's always worse, of course, in at this time of year because it's super bright light, but it's not full spectrum. I'll tell you about my journey into investigating light in a minute. So the act of coming out of finally managing to relax, or more often than not being supremely ill at Christmas, and then setting an alarm, that jolting myself awake, putting on my suit of armour, putting on my power boots, and I don't mean power boots in a good way, I mean power boots in a pretending to be other than I was way. Oh, that's a whole nother conversation. Putting on your power boots is part of my group program, Get Your Life Back, I've just realised, and I mean it that's interesting. That's another conversation. It's power boots authentically is different than pulling on your power boots to push on through. So the power, like everything in life, is how you use the tool, which is right. It's really, really important to tune in and listen to what's going on for you personally at any given moment and any given environment. But for me, that forcing myself into positive, inspirational teacher mode at the beginning of January was not good for me. And the bright lights in the classroom, plus, oh my goodness, one year I came back and they'd put this dark film to reflect the sunlight so that you wouldn't need blinds on my windows. And it was like, for me, it was like walking into depression. Oh my goodness, there was no natural daylight now. And then there was the bright lights. Yeah, it wasn't a great environment to work in. It didn't work for me. Obviously, I got sick, burnt out, and that's the end of that. But that's not the point right now. The point right now is what happened to you if you had your first week back last week. That's the point. What happened to you? Sorry, did you just hear that noise? That was Nutmeg, my youngest dog, leaping on the spare bed behind me. Oh, she doesn't snore loudly like Rosie, who I'm sure you've heard on the podcast, but she does like to jump around. She's super athletic. Anyway, sorry about that. So how did you feel when you went back, if you went back to work last week? So noticing that is vital because it's really useful information. And then you can notice your reaction to it. So if it felt like, oh man, you're right, it did feel like I walked in, by the end of the week I felt, or even the first day, I used to get it on the first day, like I'd walked into a wall of concrete. So my eyes felt swollen, my head felt swollen inside, like I'd knocked my brain, my soft brain against my skull. I really did have physical symptoms like I'd walked into a wall of concrete. And all I'd done was get up and go to work. So that didn't work for me. So going through a few years later, what was it like for me last week? And this is I'm describing what I went through, so you can consider where you are, because it's really important that we notice where we are, because we can only start from where we are, right? So for me last week, I decided to have the Monday off because my partner had the Monday off, and then I was excited about going back to work on Tuesday. And Tuesday was, and I always have a slow week because I like to start slowly. But then I found myself annoyed because even though I'd allowed time, so I had no appointments booked in, really important in the first week back for me, and I was still available to support clients, but in that gentle way, in a way of what way I've set my business up, that works really well for me and for them. But I went back on the Tuesday, and the whole point of the Tuesday was to just take this real kind of like almost like a hot warm bath, deep dive into dreams for my business, and just to get clear about that. So over the previous weeks, I'd been celebrating and identifying what I loved about what I'd achieved in 2022 and previously. So taking stock of where I was, letting go of what I didn't want, really focusing on what I do want from my business this year. I'd already done this for personal goals, and this was my business day, or even 3 or 4 days of this for my business day. And what happened? I really didn't feel very well. So I hadn't been particularly well. I'd had unwellness as opposed to illness. So I just felt under the weather, quite literally. The weather was foul and I felt under it. And I had a eye infection, and it really did make me feel poorly. Had a lot of headaches with it. Don't know what that was about. But there's some good stuff came out of that, which I will talk to you about in a second. I just finished this bit. So this is what I noticed. I didn't feel well, and I was deeply disappointed with myself, like I'd failed. I really noticed that this year, this like feeling of failure. This was the time I had for my business to do this, getting excited about goals. And I was disappointed with myself that I didn't feel well enough to do it, because I really couldn't use my head, because my head hurt. And then the coffee machine broke, and the coffee machine, I love our coffee machine. I would save it in a fire. It is amazing. And it broke. And that actually didn't matter terribly, because I'm not addicted to coffee. I just enjoy my coffee. But I do find it helpful when you have a headache. It does tend to shift a headache. I didn't get upset about the coffee machine, actually. I was quite relaxed about it. I was curious to see what my partner would do about it. He decided he couldn't live without it and replaced it, which was quite an interesting statement. But I get that, because I did say I would save it in a fire, just because it's joyful. It's just got this, it's so clever. You press a button and it grinds up the beans, and it just produces the most beautiful coffee very, very easily. I just think I love things that are well designed, that add to your life, and this is one of those things. So anyway, last week was a bit of a weird week for me. I was excited about lots of things. I'd done all of this taking stock and celebrating and saying, yeah, I love how I've set up my life. I love my business. I've stepped more and more into my strengths. I've honed my skills more and more as a coach. My group program works. My podcast is valuable to people and popular. What else? Oh yeah, I released my book. I mean, come on. I published a book. So there's so much goodness. So I just was really looking forward to this gentle time of, this is what's going on. What's next, and getting excited. Even though it was quite early in the year, and I don't actually start my year in January. But this is what I had planned. And I couldn't do it because my head hurt, and then the coffee machine broke, and blah, 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 blah. So I was just very disappointed, and I noticed this feelings of failure. It's like, well, this shouldn't be happening. I should feel well. It's ridiculous, right? You can't control. You can look after yourself better, and you can value your body, and you can nourish your mind, and you can listen to your heart. All of the things we do as a gentle rebel, but you can't prevent every sickness. Sometimes your body needs to get sick in order to tell you something. They say it's good, don't they, to have like a cold or something. It clears stuff out. So this weird, it's back to the needing to control the external environment in order to feel good. So it took me a while, because I didn't feel well. Actually, I know exactly how long it took me. It took me railing against it on the Tuesday, because I was super excited about being a person with a successful business who was dreaming in the next year. And I was cross, and I tried really hard to shake off the headache. I had my list, but I couldn't do it, because I couldn't look at a screen and writing. I couldn't think straight because my head hurt. The next day I woke up, messy journaled it out. This is how I feel. I don't feel well. That's all. It's no big deal. Just don't feel well. That's okay. I'm very fortunate, because in my business, I have time to be sick. It's okay. That's it. There was no problem. And then what I did was, on the Wednesday, I just went with it. I don't feel well. I'm taking the day off. Sick. I'm just letting it go. What happened? I got better. Oh, it's so funny, isn't it? So yes, I thought I'd share that with you, because it is quite amusing, really. The pressures that we can put on ourselves that aren't actually there, we're creating them in our minds. Very, very common, I think. And that's what happens in the new year, big time, I believe. The new year is even if you ignore all of the stuff in the press and social media about New Year's resolutions, goal setting, the rest of it, even if you just go, yeah, that's not for me, this isn't when I choose to start my year, even if you ignore that, there is still this cultural pressure, isn't there? It's new year, new me, all of that stuff. So that's the first thing on my list about this time of year and this special sort of overwhelm that is worth noticing so that you can free yourself from it, because that's the point, right? Let's gently rebel against this nonsense. But before I move on to the next few bits for you to consider on my list, I did promise you I'd explain what I meant about light bulbs, etc. So if you listened to my episode, I don't know when it was now, I don't know why it's becoming the varifocal episode, where I did discuss this whole bizarre thing about how I got these varifocals and I felt dizzy and nauseous because you have to wait until your brain gets used to and believes that it can see through them, and how that's just weird, and I tried to go with it. Anyway, I took them back and I got a refund. I decided it was just not for me. It was just really not helping at all. And I don't know if that contributed to not feeling well last week, because that was all related to my eyes. Don't know. But anyway, it doesn't really matter. The opticians were great. It's not their fault. So then I was like, okay, so if the brain is, and I know this as a psychologist, and I know I've talked about this many times before, how we look at things, what we expect to see is what we see. The eyes construct, they don't with the brain. The retina is part of the brain, so it's all more complicated. And when you're faced with varifocals, well, for me personally, when I was faced with trying to trick my brain into believing it could see through these varifocals, it really highlighted to me the power of how the brain constructs things. So the way we look at things matters. What we believe to be true is what we're going to see. And of course, there's masses of this. There's loads of sayings, aren't there? Was it Henry Ford? Whether you believe you can or you believe you can't, you're right. There's lots of famous sayings about this, about how the way you look at things matters hugely. So then I just ignored it. I was so grateful to get my normal glasses back. And then I went back to the whole, is there anything I can do about my vision in a different way? How can I improve my vision? Without varifocals? Because that's not going to work for me. I don't want to go there again. There must be, there's always been this thing, or for a long time it's been this thing that bugs me. How did we get this far as a species without glasses? Why are we all wearing glasses? Now, an obvious one would be we spend a lot of time on screens, we're probably damaging our eyes. Turns out this is probably true. I haven't read all the research, but I've read a lot of stuff over the past few weeks where people have read the research. As you know, one of my things is no longer to go and read all the research, because I get sucked into it and then I lose hours of my life, and I've decided I don't need to know everything, that I'm also going to use what feels right to me. Now, I could go the whole Google Scholar. I have read bits of the research about myopia, short-sightedness. That's not for this podcast. That's not what this episode is about. But what happened was, in the process of listening to the other side, so what if I decided that I could nourish my eyes? What if I could have better lighting? What effects does light, being indoors, being outside, sleep, nutrition, the way I use my eyes, how much screen time, blue light, all of that, how is that really impacting me? Because I'm 54 and I don't want my eyesight to get any worse. I've worn glasses since I was 15. Most of that time I've worn contact lenses because, quite frankly, I find glasses just weird. I can see the glasses frame. It's in the way. And I don't like it. I don't like wearing glasses. I don't mind what they look like. I mind the fact that they're really inconvenient. I just don't like them. I don't want to wear glasses. But then I've been through the getting of the varifocals was the acceptance that, okay, well, I'm a person who wears glasses, so I'm just going to get some nice glasses and go with it and be grateful that there are glasses. That's where I went with the varifocals. And when they so badly didn't work for me, and I really thought about the power of the fact that I was basically trying to accept the fact that I could see through the varifocals even though I couldn't, because that's how you adjust to them. So that just made me, because this is the kind of person I am, go down the other way and ask questions. And in the process of reading books about how to improve your vision, I have got excited about lots of things which all fit with my philosophy and gently rebelling against what's everyone else is doing, even though it doesn't seem to be working for me. And one of the things is about, full circle again, light bulbs. And as I'm very, very sensitive to light, particularly artificial light. I love being outside. I love the sunshine, but my mood is very affected by the amount of sunshine we have outside, and also seasonally, which is light as well. But inside light drives me mad. So when we moved into our cottage and we had it rewired, my dream, I remember saying this to an electrician, can you make my dream come true? I'd like to be able to walk in a room like in an American sitcom or American film and switch on the light and all the lamps come on. And he went, yeah, I can do that. It's just a lamp circuit. It's so funny, isn't it, when you find out. I guess it's like when people come to me and I say, yeah, we can do something about that overwhelm and all those feelings. You can have the life you want. What feels possible and easy. You have to own your expertise, don't you? So an electrician just went, yeah, it's a lamp circuit. Like, it's really super easy to do. So anyway, in our cottage we have lamp circuits, which I love, but I'm now seeing that I've designed it so that it has non-glaring lights, because I don't like artificial light being too bright. The issue is, though, for reading and for vision, and also for health, is that in the daytime you need full spectrum light. So then I've been looking at charts of light bulbs and different, and full spectrum light, and learning just a little bit but not too much, because I don't want to go in the Google rabbit hole, and I don't want to be staring at a screen, and I don't need to overwhelm my mind with all this information. I don't need to be an expert in this. I just need to know what I need to know to improve my life and how good I feel, and to look after my vision. Anyway, that's where I'm going. That's where I am. I haven't got any further. I don't have an answer, because this podcast isn't about giving you answers to your vision and what light bulbs you need. It's just been fascinating for me, watching my frustration with varifocals, to now going, oh, I don't have to wear my glasses all the time, or I could get better light and then I can see better, which is true. And that going outside, I mean, as you know, if you've been following me for a while, I love the fact that as somebody who's self-employed, I can regularly go outside, particularly in the summer when it's sunny, and like previously I would have been stuck inside. It's very important to me that I can go outside and absorb the sunlight whenever possible. It makes me happy. It makes me alive. It's what I want to be doing. It's non-negotiable for me. And the varifocals thing, and thinking about how what we expect changes what we see and what we experience, has got me into realizing even more benefits from just going outside, including even when it's not sunny. So anyway, that's what's going on. I don't know. I thought you might like to know that. Even just that example of how I nourish my mind by not cramming it full of information unnecessarily, even though I'm a research geek. Right now, I used to be a research geek. I used to love reading educational research and then putting it into practice in the classroom to make things better. I used to do a lot of reading about well-being and using positive psychology to improve mindset and happiness in the classroom and for teachers. I loved reading all that stuff, and now I read less on purpose because it just crams my brain. I don't need all of that, and it's time that I trusted myself more and listened to my heart and my gut and my body more, because the overloading of my mind is what led to my burnout, and particularly the not listening to my body and my heart. So if I spend too much time down a Google rabbit hole of research, I know that's just it's just not necessary. It doesn't work for me. I'm really happy with that. And I also think it's worth noting that as a professional, well-educated person, or as any person, we have this thing where we think, well, I ought to know something, and it can be embarrassing to say, well, actually, I don't know, could you tell me? But when we get to the stage where we can say, actually, I don't know, I'm not sure, or I've forgotten, or I read something but I didn't really read it properly, or that's okay. It's not shameful. We don't have to know everything. We have to know enough for us. We don't have to know everything. We don't have to keep on top of everything. That must-read list can get completely out of control very, very quickly. And it can be a huge source of overwhelm. I must read that, must absorb everything, must understand, must go back to the first principles of it, who designed the research, who said this, I must be able to quote it, otherwise I'm just talking rubbish. No. You do need to know your stuff, but you decide what that is. I just think it's really important that we get over this. I don't believe that just because Google has everything, we don't need to retain anything. I don't believe that at all, because without knowledge and education and reading and digesting, we don't get discernment, because we haven't got any reference point. And then that means anybody can change a Wikipedia page and convince you of anything because you don't know anything. Like, education's important, and I read loads. It's not that I don't read, it's that I'm more careful with how I spend my reading time, because I also want to be outside playing with my dogs and stuff, nice stuff like that. Anyway. Back to New Year overwhelm, the special sort of overwhelm that can be kind of devastating, because it's like, I missed my chance now. The 1st of January is gone and I've screwed up my whole year already. Yeah, let's let go of that nonsense. I was thinking about this in terms of meditation. So when we meditate, at least how I meditate, so mindfulness meditation is the process of just absorbing your thoughts and bringing your attention back again and again and again, each time you realize that it's drifted off. And if we move that into the 1 minute mark and neutral noticing, if you haven't yet got the 1 minute mark, go to my website and get it for free. So it's a 1 minute audio. It's not a meditation. It's really important. Somebody gave it away as part of I did a podcast, and I said this is an audio, and I noticed later that they'd said a free meditation. This is really important to me. I mean, it doesn't matter actually at all, but it kind of matters. So meditation to me is not the process of listening to an audio that somebody guides you through. You could argue that's a guided meditation, and I do enjoy those, and I do have them. But for me, meditation is about you. It's about you taking your power back, your attention back, and the ability to sit in silence and observe your own thoughts and repetitively bring your attention back to yourself, whether it's your breath or just, your heart or your body, whatever feels right for you, over and over again, is such a basic human skill. I just think it's like cleaning your teeth, right? It's just, we really do all need that skill. The ability to sit in silence and keep bringing our attention back to whatever we're rooting it in. So the breath, the sit bones, whatever. Really, really important. Whereas a guided meditation, you're not doing that. And it's just different. So to me, that's not meditation. I don't think it matters what you call it. It really doesn't matter. But the ability to observe yourself without judgment. So the Buddhist non-judgmental observing is very, very important. So in the 1 minute mark, in all my neutral noticing practice, in the practice of neutral noticing, you are noticing how you feel in any given moment completely neutrally. But we split it up. So you observe and then you notice your judgments about the observation. And just for me, that makes it simpler and also richer, because you're getting even more information, because it's all just useful information. Nothing's wrong. Everything you observe about yourself is useful information, and without that information, you're pretty lost because you don't know where you are. So we always need to start where we are. So the new year is like a big major pressure reset. So it is a big opportunity, but it also can be huge pressure, because it's like if we blow it, I read something the other day, somebody said, I'm not doing dry January, I'm doing damp January, which I really liked because it's rebellious, right? But say you wanted to do dry January and you had a drink on the 3rd, you'd then go, well, I've blown it. But you haven't. because every moment is a chance to reset. So if we think about mindfulness and meditation, and each time you realize, or if this happens, if I teach meditation or if I teach neutral noticing, each time you realize that your mind has drifted off, you bring it back. Each time it's the realizing where your attention's gone and having the intention to bring it back. That's it. Now that happens if you sat and meditated for 5 minutes. I don't know, it depends on the day. So sometimes that might happen once, sometimes that might happen 100 times. Like and it doesn't matter, because you're not trying to clear your mind in mindfulness meditation. All you are doing is noticing, oh, my mind's drifted off, I'll bring it back, bring it back, bring it back, bring it back. And if you take that as a microcosm of a year or a lifetime, it's the same thing. So it doesn't matter. So if you've missed your targets or goals, or you're feeling overwhelmed, like my year didn't start very well, it doesn't matter, because every moment is a new year. That's it. Every moment is a new year. Every moment is an opportunity to start again, because we are always renewing. Like all the cells in our body are constantly renewing. We are not the same person we were a moment ago. We are constantly changing. The one constant in life is change. Everything is changing all the time. Some things feel really fast, some things feel really slow. Observe it all. It's just information, useful information, when you take it neutrally. So now you know that enables you to change how you're looking at the new year, and it enables you the freedom to rebel and do it your way. So let's continue with the list of things that might be adding to your current New Year overwhelm, and then let's think of what we can do with that. So the idea is to neutrally notice your overwhelm, where it might be coming from, what it feels like, what it looks like. So get really clear on where you are, and then tune into what you want instead. It's usually the opposite, which makes it really easy. And then you can just decide, okay, so I'm just going to start again now. Every moment is a new year. Or you can literally move your new year. It's quite common inside Get Your Life Back to move the beginning of the year. So the next thing I want to talk about is that New Year comes just after Christmas, and that Christmas has its own very unique overwhelm. And this is to do with two things primarily I want to focus on. One is the solstice. So over here, it's the shortest day. You guys down in New Zealand and Australia, obviously it's your longest day. It's usually around the 21st of December. And that's pretty powerful. I mean, that's a big shift. Just having a lot less daylight or a lot more daylight, that's impactful. There's a lot of stuff going on there, and there's a lot of shifts and change. The energy of the world is different at those times of year, for whatever reason. And ancient civilizations built really interesting structures to look at these times of year. Solstices matter, and yet in the modern world we set up this artificial environment where we're trying to discount all of that. So we have, like me walking into a bright classroom on a dark January morning and feeling like I've walked into a wall of concrete. It's the opposite of what's really going on, naturally going on, and we are part of nature. So it's worth for you just noticing whether you kind of skirted over the fact that there was a solstice. It's worth noticing. Maybe there's something there for you about nourishing your body, being kinder to yourself. Maybe going, or even just saying, okay, so there was some weird, it's a weird time of year, plus Christmas. So Christmas is a time, or whether you celebrate Christmas or whatever you did, there's a lot of energy around about expectations, exhaustion, visiting lots of family, trying to get a present that represents how much you love that person, or how well you know them, or you don't know them, or you don't really like them, or it's a minefield, right? So, and then there's all the food and all of the activities. There's just a lot. It's a big time of year. So you've got all of that emotional processing going on. So I find that most Christmases seem to involve some renegotiating of relationships, some grief to let go of, some celebrations of how things are now. Like, there's a lot of stuff coming up. It's family time, it's Christmas, it's solstice, it's a big time of year. And then we have New Year, and it's just wrong, personally, I think. But anyway, so there's the expectations, and then there's this whole, for us here in the Northern Hemisphere, wintering. I'm wintering. I'm still wintering. I mean, part of me, I've noticed, I can feel this like energy rising of excitement of like, yes, bring it on. And my bulbs are coming up in the garden, which I'm super excited about. So since moving here, I've probably planted, oh God, I don't know, at least 1,000 bulbs. Bulbs are cool because you plant them and they keep coming up if you're lucky. And if you're really lucky, they spread as well. So I've got, I planted a lot. Actually, I planted at least 1,000 daffodils because they come in bags of like 500, don't they? So I've probably planted 1,500, but I don't know. I planted a lot of bulbs, and it's super exciting because in the depth of winter, i.e. it's super dark now, when I go outside, there's these little green shoots. So cool. And they're so powerful and they inspire me. So I planted daffodils underneath the grass at the bottom of the garden, and they push through that. They're so strong. You know, this tiny bulb has all this energy in it, and then super exciting. It just pushes through turf. Turf's tough. It's tough to cut with a spade. I find that just excites me. That fills my heart. And I planted different bulbs this year as well. There's some tiny things coming. I don't know what they all are because I can't remember what I planted where, but roughly every year I move the snowdrops. So I was very fortunate to move into a very old cottage garden, not in great condition at all, but there were lots of snowdrops. So every year I move them in the green, which means you move them just after flowering, and they just spread everywhere and they naturalise, and that's amazing. So my dream is to have these drifts of snowdrops, these drifts of daffodils, these drifts of crocuses, and then comes the tulips, and oh my goodness. So there's so much to look forward to even before spring. So I find this super exciting, but it's also, the thing is, while that's going on, that's how I feel. I'm mainly wintering underground. There's some little like green shoots wanting to pop up going, yeah, I'm really excited to start this and I want to do this project, but it's all tiny. You know, I can't go from in the depth of winter to like full bloom. What are we doing to ourselves? Why are we trying to be the same every day of the year? Doesn't make any sense. Not in this part of the world. And I don't know if it would anyway. I'd be interested to know if for those of you who live in a different climate and season, I'd be absolutely fascinated to know how this relates to you. I really genuinely would. Please do drop me a line, heidi@heidimarke.co.uk, or go to social media and, you know, do a messagey thing. Anyway, another thing that's going on at the moment is rain. So having had one of the big doom stories here in the UK this year was water shortages, terrible. There was a lot of crazy climate alarmism where the weather reports had weather maps that looked like they were on fire, and then you could compare them to one in the 1980s and the colours were different. I mean, can we stop with climate alarmism? Seriously, there's a lot of mental health issues and a lot of bad decisions happening because of fear and alarm. And we know the human mind doesn't respond well to fear and alarm. It is no place to live from. It is no place to make decisions from. Can we stop with the climate alarmism, please? And just calm down and start talking about things properly. We all want the world to be thriving. Of course we do. But getting fierce and scary isn't helping anyone. It's not really working out very well, is it? Anyway, because we had that whole, I mean, here in Wiltshire, we had, I don't know, about 3-4 weeks and it was super hot, but we still had rain at the beginning. And then I think we probably had about 3 weeks without rain. And I did get upset because I love my garden and the water butts are all in the wrong place and they weren't full because they're not all set up yet. And some of them are old and leaky. I ran out of water and I'm still waiting to see. Most of the plants have come back. Some of them come back even better than before. So the drought was probably good for them. I think there's probably one plant that was precious to me that I might have to replace, maybe two, so it's not that bad. But I did get upset. And I also kind of upset because we have a lot of rain in this country, particularly in the West Country. There's no reason for us to have a water shortage. You know, the job of water companies is to sort the water out. Do it. Get on with it. Do your job. And right now, we have a ridiculous amount of rain. So I hope they are saving it for the summer. But I'm struggling with the amount of rain. I have to be honest. It's dreary. It's grey. It's very hard to get good outside time. It's making everything soggy. The dogs, if you take them out, get super muddy, and then you can't put them on the settee. They can't be on the settee with you. I'm bored of the rain. I don't want any more rain for a bit, but there it is. How does the weather affect you? So it's worth noticing whether the rain, which just seems incessant at the moment, is affecting you, is making you feel like, oh, this is like sludging through mud. If the beginning of January has felt like sludging through mud, maybe just notice that. It won't rain forever because everything changes, right? The next thing is back to light, the amount of light and how it affects you. And also a suggestion to maybe think about how much light you're getting, as in how much outside time, what your lights are like inside and how that impacts you. It's worth knowing. It's worth paying attention to light. I know I felt like that already. Now I know even more. It's worth noticing, how does light make you feel? Because when we get overwhelmed and down on ourselves, we can often feel like it's us. But actually, if you read stuff, it's clear that light has enormous impacts on how we feel and our health. Just leaving that out there for you to not go down a Google rabbit hole, but to be kinder to yourself and to notice for yourself what's affecting you. So if we take all of these possible sources of overwhelm, possible sources of pressure, possible sources of feeling a bit kind of, oh, I just need to go back to bed for the rest of winter. Yeah, because it's winter and we need wintering time. We need to slowly have little green shoots of ideas and excitement about the year coming through. Noticing how you feel matters. It doesn't matter how anybody else feels. It doesn't matter that other people seem to be coping better with going back to work in January. It doesn't matter. It's irrelevant. All that matters is how you feel. Nothing else matters. Obviously, other things matter, like if you have children and animals and, you know, responsibilities, which we all have. Obviously, they matter. But the most important thing is how you feel, because from how you feel, everything else starts there. And when we ignore how we feel and push on through, well, that's when we push against ourselves. How's that working out for you? So be on your own side. Notice whether you are feeling pressure, dreariness, sludginess, walking into concreteness, New Year overwhelm. Just notice it and then know that you get to decide when your new year starts, and every moment is the opportunity for that, every single moment. But if you want to do like a big new year start, when would it be? Would it be your birthday? Would it be in the middle of the summer? When would it be for you? Now, as a gardener living in the southwest of England, pretty much kind of like March, April time feels more New Year-y because it gets lighter. I'm in the garden more. I don't have a set date. I'm kind of feeling my way. I know some people go for the 1st of April, particularly as gardeners, I think. What feels good to you? When do you want to start your new year? Because you get to decide. Gently rebel against the calendar. And this story will help you do that. So, as a gentle rebel, I'm going to do everything possible to support my gentle rebellion, because I want to live my life to the full. I want to have as much freedom, fun, just be me, have a real Heidi life, because that's what I want to do. And anything in the way is useful information to turn around. And one of the things is, for me, is expectations. of the culture around me. They can weigh heavily on me, and then I can get into the whole, what's wrong with me? So anytime I can find any information that things used to be different than they are now, I find that interesting, because we assume that everything's always been this way and it's us who's the odd one out. At least I've noticed that's been a pattern for me in my life. So this is what happened. Quite regularly in the past few years, we've got into going wassailing. Wassailing is when you go to an orchard and you sing and bless the apple trees. It's a really nice West Country tradition because there's a lot of orchards in the West Country. And I was looking up different events this year because I want my grown-up boys to join us. So I just thought, which is nearest to them? Is there another one to go to, even though I love the one we go to? So I was just looking at it, and then each year I learned a little bit more about wassailing. I'm also really, really interested in all of the old English customs, which is I thought, there must be a few years ago I looked for a calendar of like all the old seasonal customs, because I thought that would help me mark the year. That might help me find my rhythm. But there isn't one. And the reason there isn't one is because each area had a different calendar, had different events going on. And I love that. So anyway, so I dropped that, but I have still been reading about interesting old English customs, and that's been fun. But back to the wassailing story, because this is important for you, I think, and your gentle rebellion. And this is what I discovered. Not all of the wassails are held on the same day. Why not? Because they moved the calendar. So wassailing is traditionally done on 12th night. And there's this whole thing, isn't there, about when do you take your Christmas decorations down? It's supposed to be 12th night. And I was looking at all of this, and there's lots of stories about it and different things. But the thing that's important, I think, for us as gentle rebels is the calendar was moved, and some people didn't move with it. And I love that rebellion. So some wassails are, the one we go to is on the 15th of January, but other ones are on like the 5th or the 4th of January. Why? Because the calendar moved not that long ago. I thought the January to December calendar, in my head, I mean, I've never looked at it and we weren't taught it at school as far as I know, but in my head, it was something to do with the Romans. I don't really know. So in my head, the calendar has been the same kind of calendar for at least 2,000 something years. I don't really know. I didn't really think about it that much. But this isn't true. The calendar was changed only a few hundred years ago. In fact, my cottage, it was here for like 100. I can't remember when. I've forgotten it all already, and I don't mind because I've taken what I need from it, which is this. It wasn't that long ago. My cottage was standing when they changed the calendar, and it was quite a messy change, obviously, because you're trying to get everybody to do the same thing, right? And not everybody wants to do the same thing. So they changed the calendar. I can't remember why. I can't remember the reason, but there was this 11 days difference, and in a certain time a few hundred years ago, they decided to just get rid of these 11 days. And some people were like, well, I want my 11 days back. I love this. And this is also why the tax year is the 1st of March and all sorts of things. I can't remember why, but I did read about it. Here we go again. Here's me trying to justify my lack of knowledge. Can you notice? I'm not justifying it. I don't need to know. It was an interesting story. The most important thing to me is they moved the calendar only a few hundred years ago, and it affects things, right? Because somebody's decided that the year starts on the 1st of January in the bleak midwinter when it's really dark. What if we could start the year whenever we wanted? Which you can, particularly as it's not that fixed. Like, people could get together and decide to move it again. It doesn't really matter. The calendar doesn't make that much sense anyway, does it? I mean, there's 13 full moons in a year. Why we not do that? And I know there's an answer, but I don't care. My point is, how do you want your calendar to be? When does it suit you? That's all that matters. What suits you? And then you can notice what suits you, and you can notice what the expectations are of everybody else, including how business and work works and schools work. And then you can notice that when it feels out of sync, that's why it feels out of sync. Not because there's something wrong with you, but because there's just an arbitrary time measurement. That's it. That's my story about wassailing and discovering they moved the calendar only a few hundred years ago, which I had no idea about. And now I'm super excited about, I don't know, that just makes me feel more rebellious, more playful, and like, well, do you know what? I'm doing my own calendar. I hope it inspires you to drop the pressure on yourself to be all in full bloom and all sparkly in the middle of a dark, rainy January. Be kind to yourself, rebel. You decide when your year starts. You decide how you live your life. And before I go, I have an exciting semi-announcement because I'm doing a slow January. Anyway, I did mention a couple of episodes back about the idea of starting the Gentle Rebel membership, where we come together off social media as a community, where I can do proper workshops in the community so that you can get the support that you need and the feeling of community, so that you don't feel alone as you have your gentle rebellion, creating your adventure. So this is going to be a low cost membership, so that it's accessible to most people who want to be in it. And the offer for January will be a special reduced rate because it will be to founder members. And I'm super excited about that. Details are coming soon. If you want to make sure that you don't miss the opportunity, because at the moment my intention is to just go for it. I haven't worked out all the details yet. That's on my list, but I just wanted to mention it now because I know there's a delay in a podcast going out and you hearing about it. If you're not on my email list, then you could miss the date. So I'm intending that we just get on with it and I launch it and we get straight in on the 1st of February. I'm super excited about this. I can't wait to get a community together off Facebook, off social media. I'm just not interested. Anyway, if you're interested, what can you do? You can join my email list by going to my website. You could sign up for the 1 minute mark. That puts you on my email list so you won't miss anything. You can follow me on Instagram. You can drop me a line, heidi@heidimarke.co.uk. And you could book a curiosity call actually, and just if you want to chat through it, whether you think it would be for you or whether you want to work with me as your coach. So yeah, that's what's coming up. So I thought I'd just mention that before I go. Anyway, super excited. Have a great week. I'll see you next week. Thank you so much for being part of this podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please do take a little moment of your time to share it, like it, etc., to help other people find it. And if you'd like to know more about my work, please go to www.heidimarke.co.uk.